I tossed the scissors, okay? Holy water couldn't get them clean enough. There was no way in hell I'm using them on anybody else. You know, when you are like a child and you take a tour of your local police station and then they give you a little certificate that's calling you a junior policeman, you know, these people that get this veneer tech, now all of a sudden they're like, they can just put veneers on, right? That's all bullshit. You know, you really kind of screw them over with your Temu version, and now like their smiles and their teeth are ruined. But I can say a case that has unfolded, and goddamn did this person look rough. But maybe not. Maybe you went to school in Florida and you're fake news. I have no idea. Hey guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'm your host, Hannah, and this is Under the Scrubs. All right, we are back for episode 18. We are really just kind of discussing different like botched plastic surgeries, maybe like stuff that's kind of like in that realm of like the medical aesthetic, just like some really horror stories of it. And so I'm going to jump into my timeout and we can get started on that bad boy. You know, I'm only a week into this whole married life thing, and I don't think it's as difficult as people say. Now, okay, hear me out. I know there's going to be ups and downs. I'm sure we are headed for a deployment soon. I'm very stressed about it. Fingers crossed it doesn't happen this year, but it's like that gut feeling of like it's going to. I know you add kids to the mix and it gets even tougher. But I remember when like people that are my age, when like they started getting married, and like this one girl in particular, man, she was like posting, oh, 6 months being married, you know, it's difficult but rewarding. And I'm sitting here very confused. Like, what do you mean it's difficult? Because maybe we were living in sin for, you know, almost a year before getting married. I mean, we've already worked through that kind of stage of like moving in, sharing space and all that, right? But we also had like difficult conversations early on because I wasn't going to waste my time or Chris's when we first started dating. We talked about political views, abortion, fertility issues, the loss of a job, difficult decisions where maybe one party wants to do something and the other party doesn't. I mean, we all discussed this. So one, we could learn how to navigate that road, but also two, so we could find out if we were compatible. Because I mean, there are certain things that, you know, I would stand 10 toes down on and die on that hill. There's things that he would as well. And so just kind of learning early on if we're going to be able to navigate that. I think talking about this kind of stuff beforehand is helpful too. So it's not really as much of a surprise if it were to, you know, pop up or happen. I was on a travel assignment once and there was this girl who was going through a pretty sad breakup, but her boyfriend had told her at the beginning that he didn't want kids. And she told him, well, that she did. And so they continued dating for like 3 or 4 years and then had this awful breakup because they just kind of figured the other person would change their mind. Like, sorry, girl, I can't really feel sorry for you. You kind of knew going into that the stove was going to be hot before you touched it, and you still touched it. You know, I'm not gonna lie, Chris and I we also do that whole like man leading the household bullshit. I mean, we got to be equal partners in this because I'm not a horse. You just can't lead me in life. And don't try and feed me sugar cubes from your palm and like pet my hair because I will probably bite the shit out of you because of it. But I think so far, I know, like I said, it's only been a week, but we've been together for what, 2.5 years now. I think so far, this whole married thing is really just a contract. It's been easy and we're enjoying the dink double income, no kid lifestyle for right now. I know Fern is definitely benefiting it. The cats, they're definitely benefiting it, although they don't really care. So far it seems okay. And just as a fair warning, we are trying to get ready for our honeymoon. I'm trying to record episodes ahead of time so that way we can slot them for release while we're gone. I need to get like 3 of them done. So fingers crossed it actually works because I will be out of service for a few weeks. We will be posting pictures when we're back. I'll tag the podcast Instagram so you can live vicariously through our trip. Fingers crossed I adopt a donkey. They don't actually let you take the donkey home unless maybe I can finesse my way. But yeah, so with that, we're going to jump into our episode. Resources for today are Ohio Medical Board, the Columbus Dispatch, TC Palm, ABC West Palm Beach, Florida, Find Law, 8 News Now, CBS News, WSB TV Atlanta, BBC, NBC Philadelphia, Fox News, Pensacola News Journal, and CBS 8. So when I was first, moving out to go to college, I remember when my sister and I were renting our first apartment. In that agreement, it tells you like, hey, don't eat the paint on the walls. Some of the buildings are just really old. They might still have lead paint, which you hear that and you're like, yeah, I kind of thought that was a no given. But you can tell that they had to put that on the agreement because I'm sure someone out there did eat the paint or tried to and got sick. Like when kids were eating Tide Pods, the rest of us are thinking, well, no shit. But unfortunately, people were doing it. What you think you should know, like maybe don't live stream while you're at work, especially if you work in healthcare. The rest of us are going to say no shit. But just recently, a nurse at a nursing home actually was live streaming herself on TikTok during a med pass. And yeah, she violated multiple accounts of HIPAA as she was calling residents by their names. She even made a med error and had used her teeth to open up a lidocaine patch. You could not waterboard me enough to get me to open anything in the hospital with my teeth. All right, I got those little foldable scissors for Nurses Week one year, and I had to, I don't know if this is TMI, but I'm gonna tell you anyways. I had to snip some butthole hair because it had a little poop nugget stuck in it, and the patient was really painful, whatever. I snipped it, right? I tossed the scissors. Okay. Holy water couldn't get them clean enough. There was no way in hell I'm using them on anybody else. And so this whole thing that happened with this nurse live streaming, it only happened really just a handful of days ago. So we're going to be able to watch this kind of play out in real time. But it's things like this that make you say, what are you thinking? You woke up and you were like, yeah, no, this is a good idea. I'm going to do it. All right. And just stay with me here for a second because I promise I'm going somewhere with this. Okay. There was a plastic surgeon, Dr. Catherine Roxanne Gra. She's also known as Dr. Roxy on social media. And she was live streaming on TikTok during her procedures. Now, we all know this probably isn't great. The first letter from the medical board came in October 2018 telling Catherine that she really needed to be careful and that she needed to maintain patient privacy when sharing any kinds of photos or videos of her patient's medical procedures. Okay, so she goes on, 3 years later, September 2021, they had sent another letter and they had even more concerns. They said that there were multiple issues with the care of these patients, including concerns regarding the lack of informed consent, ethical concerns related to privacy and social media, and avoidable complications that required surgical revision. Because that's the thing, right? You're live streaming. People are watching. You think other plastic surgeons or other surgeons or other people in the medical profession aren't going to see that and see when you mess up? That'd be like watching somebody live streaming themselves doing an IV start. They scrub the skin and then they go back in with their bare hand, touch the vein, and then put the IV in, right? You'd be like, no, you just contaminated that. It's the general population might not realize, but everybody else that works in the field, they're going to see that and go, oh, that's not right. The state board even asked her how she was able to respond to comments during the procedures from her live stream. Was she taking her eyes off the patients or on the field? She had said that someone else in the room would record and read questions as they appeared, and then she would just respond verbally that she wasn't taking her eyes off. But again, girl, you're live streaming surgeries to God knows who. You do BBLs, you do breast augmentations, abdominoplasties, and you're just putting this out there on the internet. People can see what you're doing and they can hold you accountable if you mess up. So to date, she has been named a defendant in at least 26 civil cases. At least 8 of them are closed, but 18 of them remain open. Only one of them was for personal injury, but the others were filed under professional torts. And that's the tort that covers malpractice and are the result of injury or death. And now no patients have died, but there have been several that came forward and were botched so severely that they required more surgeries to correct it. All in all, Catherine lost her medical license by July 2023. She was fined $4,500, which really is not that bad. But then her practice was fined as well because turns out she failed to get licensure for her surgical facility. The medical board cited that Catherine violated the minimal standards of care with regard to 3 patients specifically receiving liposuction from the provider. Catherine avoided actual criminal charges, which unfortunately I can't say the same about this next guy. Adley De Silva, he's a physician assistant out of St. Port Lucie in Florida, and he's the owner of Cosmetica, Plastic Surgery, and Anti-Aging. He was arrested alongside 3 other people after the police and state officials reported a massive amount of issues at the facility, including surgical procedures performed by Adley. The tip came after a number of patients reporting their severe health-related issues to other providers after having a procedure done at Cosmetica. Adley was the owner, and he was arrested on 1 count of racketeering, grand theft, and organized fraud, and 4 counts of practicing medicine without an active license and aggravated battery causing great harm. Adley's wife also caught charges with single counts of racketeering, grand theft, and organized fraud, and 3 counts of practicing medicine without a license. Fermo Lee Simpson was arrested and said that he would provide anesthesia for these procedures in which no physician was present. Diane Linda Millen also was arrested, and she was a surgical tech for Adley. Apparently, Adley was doing 360 liposuction, Brazilian butt lifts with fat transfers, tummy tucks, and breast augmentation. The facility initially had an emergency suspension placed on it June 2022, to which then the Department of Health issued a final order to revoke their business license in which they used to operate. In August of 2022, the police had spoken to a plastic surgeon who initially was a supervising provider for the first few years of Cosmetica. Late 2021, early 2022, the provider noticed that Adley wasn't referring as many people to that surgeon anymore. Like, the number had dropped drastically. And the doctor eventually actually discovered evidence that suggested that the procedures were being done incorrectly by Adley. He wrote an email to him that read, "Adley, we have seen many patients on Instagram with surgeries that you should not be doing. These are not approved by me. I have to feel comfortable with you doing these surgeries. I also know that you are working with an unlicensed doctor. These surgeries are risking my license." To which the doctor then did the right thing, turned around and turned Adley into the health department. In an October 2022 deposition, Adley said that about 90% of the surgeries he did happened when the doctor wasn't even there, but he called it an indirect supervision. Another provider who had treated one of Adley's patients said that he'd never seen anything quite like the severity of the victim's injuries. She presented with a large abdominal wound, fat necrosis, malpositioned umbilical hernia, and asymmetry of the breasts, and she actually did have suicidal ideations from it. A different provider said that they saw a Cosmetica patient and he had almost passed out due to the severity of her condition due to the liposuction. Adley testified at first in his deposition that he shadowed a plastic surgeon in school, but he never actually assisted them with procedures before. He volunteered as a first assist after graduation so he could learn about plastic surgery from the years 2013 to 2017. And in 2018, Adley bought a practice from a retiring physician, brought on a plastic surgeon to oversee, and they did provide the initials. It was SP in the affidavit. And he would attend numerous 1 to 2 day training sessions that went over various procedures. And so from 2018 to 2022, he performed about 200 procedures with his indirect supervision, quote unquote. So SP was available by phone, but not physically present if Adley were to need help. Adley would pay SP for every procedure done, and then SP remained the head physician until February 2022. After that, another doctor was appointed as overseeing physician. I know Adley did have his license revoked on top of permanent closure of Cosmetica, but I really couldn't find any more information on the criminal charges in which, the 4 individuals were booked for. So I don't know if they are going to be going through trial still. And I mean, all of this really started coming out 2024. So I can only assume maybe there's going to be more that comes up. Following the trend of people doing things that they aren't trained in, veneers are a hot ticket item. All right. You charge per tooth, and people fly to Mexico or Turkey to get them done for cheaper. And sometimes just that fix to someone's teeth really can make a difference in their confidence, right? Another TikTok viral sensation was several businesses that advertise themselves as veneer techs. Now, if you've never seen the process for getting them done, it's quite shocking. Okay, your natural teeth are ground down to like little nubs in order to prepare for the veneer adhesion. So, like all that enamel is being ground away, and enamel doesn't come back. So, just keep that in mind, right? Sometimes, if the veneer doesn't fit right or it becomes loose, your little tooth nub can turn black due to decay, like bacteria getting in there, and it can even be seen through the veneer itself. And in order to stop that or try and, treat it, prevent it, whatever, you're going to have to go shell out more money to have that tooth fixed. So for porcelain veneers in the US, it can range $2,000 to $2,500 per tooth. So about $20,000 to $25,000 per set. And the set would be like 12 to 16 veneers. So really just kind of like the front, top, and bottom. The UK is $1,300 to $1,700 per tooth, so about $13,000 to $17,000 for a set. And Turkey will run you about $270 to $370 per tooth. So a set would cost you, about $3,300 to $4,500, which is substantially different than, the US and the UK. But what if you don't have that kind of money to be gallivanting across the world for a new set of chompers? Well, veneer technicians come in. They take like maybe a day or two course, if that, and then they get this little certificate to do veneers, and then they charge you maybe, a couple grand or whatever to give you a new set of chompers. Except that the whole veneer tech thing is all bullshit and it's illegal. Like they're not even licensed to do a dental cleaning with that piece of paper that they're given at the end of the course. When you are like a child and you take a tour of your local police station and then they give you a little certificate that's calling you a junior policeman. Okay, the equivalent would be like you going out and starting arresting people. These people that get this veneer tech, now all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can clean teeth and I can not even clean teeth. They can just put veneers on, right? Where you're like, no, that's all bullshit. Only dentists are allowed to actually place veneers, and they need to be licensed on top of usually doing continuing education courses to really be skilled with veneers. So these veneer techs who really have zero idea about oral health and teeth are placing them on top of decay, which is then rotting your teeth away. There is a woman, Monica Davis, out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and she was arrested in February 2024 for illegal practice of dentistry. Monica was a veneer tech, and one of the victims came forward to talk about her situation. She said that she had seen an ad on Facebook for veneers and she had booked an appointment. And when she arrived, she had noticed that this dentist office was located inside a beauty parlor. That was red flag number one. Well, she still goes through with it. Monica begins shaving her teeth down and applying a composite, but the woman started seeing more red flags. There's no autoclave, so there's no way to sterilize instruments. There's no dental cleaning equipment. There's no dental tray. And now this woman's starting to realize, nah, she done messed up. The procedure left the woman with a larger tooth that was bigger than the others, and they had actually fused several of her surrounding teeth. She had asked Monica about, how am I going to be able to floss because these look like they're fused together. And Monica told her, no, we don't fix that. 2 weeks after the woman's appointment, a veneer broke off. So she decided to go to a real dentist this time, who told her that whatever her veneer was bonded with, that's not real dentist grade. Monica, her website initially said that she had an office in Chicago and then one there in Las Vegas. She actually goes on to catch charges back in Illinois. A mom and daughter combo said that they had gotten braces from Monica and that they wanted to book their follow-up but struggled to do so. One of the numbers was disconnected and the other one nobody would answer. And so the mom started researching Monica and saw that she'd been arrested out in Las Vegas. When the mom went to a real orthodontist to have the braces looked at, the doctor had told her that her braces weren't actually connected to anything in the back, so there's no way for the teeth to move. Another one of Monica's victims in Illinois said that her tooth had just chipped days after receiving them, the veneers, and a third had said her molar fell out after her appointment. I don't know if she's been seen in court yet, as I couldn't find the outcome of all this. I can only assume it hasn't happened yet because, again, 2024. I'd love to see what kind of money that girl's going to have to shell out, but I fear it's not going to be enough. I mean, you've shaved people's teeth down. Like, they're going to have to get veneers at, like real actual veneers. you really kind of screw them over with your Temu version. And now like their smiles and their teeth are ruined. Atlanta's top veneer specialist, or so he called himself, Brandon Dillard, was arrested in 2024 over providing illegal veneer services without a dental license. He was charged with 8 felonies, including practicing dentistry and medicine without a license and theft by deception. He was charging people $6,000 for his veneer specialist course, which is insane. The DA's office warned that anyone who took that course, and if they even attempted to practice, they would be criminally charged as well. This is just another case that has yet to pan out, so we can watch this unfold as well. I only became aware of veneer techs through TikTok because it was quite the controversy when they started popping up, and that's how a lot of people were advertising themselves. I saw this Brandon Dillard on there. I remember seeing Monica on there. Monica was calling herself a dentist, and it was like one of those things where I'm like, no, that doesn't seem right. And then next thing you know, you've got dentists, like actual dentists and dental hygienists chipping in saying, no, this isn't a thing. They're not licensed to do so. Please do not. And then followed by that were the amount of people that were going, hey, my smile got ruined because I went to these people. There's one of them where she was talking about how she'd gotten abscesses on both sides of her face because she had gotten these veneers placed. They were way too big and bulky. And she had told the lady, she goes, I don't like these. They don't feel right. And the lady told her, sorry, I don't really have the tools to fix that. So she ended up going ahead, getting the veneers planted in, and they were so bulky. She couldn't close her mouth. She couldn't drink. They were hurting. Like she couldn't do anything, right? She had to call out of work. And then so she tells the lady, she's like, I need these off. And I mean, they are ripping at them. She's tugging on them. She's like crying. She said it's the worst pain she's ever been in. The veneer tech told her, hey, you might have to go to the ER to get these removed. And it's like, what did you use to glue on there? Like actual cement? And like, that's scary that, it's your mouth and so much can happen. You get endocarditis just from like really nasty oral hygiene. It just, that barrier between your brain and, what's in your mouth, it's thin. So just these veneer techs are absolutely out here wilding out. But I can say a case that has unfolded, and goddamn did this person look rough, is the case that involves O'Neill Ron Morris, a.k.a. the Duchess, a.k.a. the Toxic Tush Doc. O'Neill was arrested for practicing medicine without a license and causing serious bodily injury. She claims to have used a tube to inject women in several places on their butts for buttock augmentation. One of her victims was injected with a mixture of cement, mineral oil, and Fix-A-Flat, like the kind of shit you put in your tire. The incisions that she had made to get the tubes in there, those were closed with super glue. The victim ended up in an ER with a nasty MRSA infection and pneumonia. One victim actually did lose her life to O'Neill's neglect, Shatarka Newby, who suffered a massive systemic silicone migration. Her incisions were closed again with super glue and cotton balls. And for those who had actually seen what had been done to her, they said that the skin had turned black and the injection sites became hard and hot prior to Shatarka passing. O'Neill was on the run for a year before police had finally caught her, and she was sentenced to 10 years in prison and 5 years of probation. It looks like, too, that she has injected her own butt, and it's not a great look. Padge Victoria Winslow. She is another illegal buttock injector who killed Claudia Aderotimi, a 20-year-old London dancer and student. Claudia was in Philadelphia for a birthday celebration when a friend said that they wanted to visit Padge just for a touch-up. Padge had these types of parties that she'd called pumping parties, where she'd go to like a hotel room and inject women's butts and then close their sites up with super glue. When Claudia had asked Padge about the injections, she had told Claudia, relax, I'm a trained medical professional. Claudia was concerned, like, hey, would this have anything to do with like my ability to have kids? Padge again, relax, girl, I'm a medical professional. During the injection, Claudia would tell Padge that she was having like crazy chest pain after each injection, and Padge would just try and soothe her, saying, relax, I'm a medical professional. But after 12 hours post-injections, Claudia would actually go on to suffer from cardiac arrest due to silicone migration that had moved up to her lungs. During the trial, Padge claimed that she didn't know silicone was dangerous, which blows my mind because how do you not know? But Padge was convicted of third-degree murder and aggravated assault for injecting another woman's buttocks after Claudia's death. The second victim developed a pulmonary embolism and still suffers complications from it. Padge received 10 to 20 years in state prison on top of 6 years probation upon her release. Now, I remember this story very vividly because it was such a wild thing to me. In 2019, a young 18-year-old Emmeline Nguyen underwent a breast augmentation with Dr. Jeffrey Kim. He was a prominent plastic surgeon out of Colorado. Shortly after the induction of anesthesia, Emmeline went into cardiac arrest. Now, the surgeon did the right thing. He started CPR, but he'd gotten ROSC, which is return of spontaneous circulation, so like the heart beat back. But he continued on. He didn't stop the surgery. He didn't call 911. None of that for 5 hours. 2 nurses testified in the trial that they had requested for permission to call, but Kim refused. So my thing is, why the hell are you even asking for permission to call? At this point, what is he going to do? Fire you because you wanted to call 911 because a patient coded on the table and he's continuing the breast augmentation? That's fine. I'd rather lose my job than watch someone die, or, you know what I mean? Like, that's just insanity. The CRNA also testified that he told Kim that the patient needed immediate medical attention and that they needed to call 911, and Kim still denied him. She did remain alive for 14 months after, but she was essentially in a vegetative state, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, speak, eat, needed around-the-clock care. Following this tragedy, Kim's license was suspended for a brief period in January 2020, but within the next month it was reinstated with probation for 3 years, along with only allowing procedures that needed general anesthesia and conscious sedation with an actual anesthesiologist on site and present. Apparently, Kim was acquitted of criminally negligent homicide, but was found guilty for attempted reckless manslaughter and obstructing telephone services. Not sure how he managed to get out of the homicide, as he clearly knew that, in reality, she had died, right? Her heart had stopped. He did get ROSC, but he didn't let anybody call 911, and he still continued to operate. He was sentenced in 2022, and he'd only spent 15 days in jail, and then he got 2 years of probation. He did get slapped with a $70,000 fine, and they actually made him do 120 hours of community service in a facility for those who have suffered brain injuries. The sad thing, this whole thing is a tragedy, especially with someone as young as 18. What makes this even worse, right? Just salt in the wound, is that his office shared a parking lot with the fire department. Like, they could have ran over. They were so close. Kim's defense was pointing fingers at Rex Meeker, who was a CRNA, saying that he had administered 7 times the necessary amount of fentanyl to Emmeline. Meeker actually voluntarily gave up his license, and his charges of criminally negligent homicide and reckless manslaughter were dismissed, while he was able to turn around and testify against Kim. Kim lost his license indefinitely, right? But the medical board was not done with him yet. In June 2024, the board reviewed a case where another woman had gone into cardiac arrest during a breast augmentation done by Kim, and he was still on that month-long probation, where technically he wasn't supposed to have his license, following Emmeline's case. He once again had refused to call 911 and actually let the patient be transported to the closest hospital by private vehicle. They also faulted how he handled the discharge of his patients and inadequate record keeping. So my curiosity is, inadequate record keeping, could he have possibly changed how much fentanyl the CRNA gave him? I'm very curious as far as what records was he keeping that weren't up to par. I'm also very curious again, if he's done this twice, how did he get out of homicide charges? Hillary Ellington Brown was getting a abdominal scar revision, arm liposuction, lip injection, and ear adjustment, whatever that is, by her husband, Dr. Ben Brown, all at one go, right? Now, I was actually able to look at the police report for this, and it was very interesting. One employee said that they had only worked for the facility for a few days, and in that short time, she had numerous concerns over the business operation. Prior to surgery, Hillary took a plethora of pills. She had prepared her own IV bag of tumescent, which is a diluted local anesthetic. It's like usually in, a 1 liter bag, and we use it for liposuction. And during that procedure, they ran out of it, to which Ben had asked for undiluted lidocaine. He started injecting her face and her arms, to which Hillary then started telling him, hey, my vision's going blurry. I'm seeing orange. She felt like her face was very puffy. And then as she began to tell her husband that she thought this was a sign of overdose, she began convulsing. The employee asked if they should call 911, to which Ben said that he wanted to try and do it himself. But there was like no oxygen in the room. There's no EKG to monitor her heart or her vitals. There's no crash cart. And then finally, after about 10 to 15 minutes, another employee came in and said, no, you need to call 911. A second employee noted that many of the same concerns from the first employee that they did share, but clarified that the pre-op pills that Hillary took were Versed, Tramadol, Gabapentin, Valium, and antibiotics. The first procedure was the lower abdomen scar revision, and Hillary actually took a break after that procedure. She was up, she was walking around, she went into Ben's office, and about a half an hour later, Ben started injecting local into her lips and her eyes, and then this is when Ben had ran out of tumescent. He asked for the lidocaine, and this employee said that it did have epinephrine in it. The second employee said the same thing, that Hillary started complaining about blurred vision, Ben kept injecting, and then Hillary began seizing. A third employee said that during the first break that Hillary had gone into Ben's office to get marked up and then returned about half an hour later and took another dose of Versed. The third employee parroted what the other two had said as far as events went. She had stated that they didn't have a crash cart, and that when she had asked about, do we have an AED in the office, the front office said that they didn't have one, and if they did for some reason, it'd probably be out back in the shed somewhere. This was the employee that decided to make the 911 call. She told police that medication in the office was just in a cabinet. It's not locked up. And for inventory, it just went off the top of Hillary and Ben's head. So like even their controlled substances, not locked up, freely accessible, there was no way to track it. When police talked to the providers at the hospital, both providers had confirmed that they were seeing the patient and that they believed she was suffering from lidocaine toxicity, and they both had suspected that Hillary was not going to survive. Police learned that this was not the first incident where Ben had overdosed a patient for surgery and then struggled waking them up. A former employee said that one day in January 2023, she was in a procedure where the victim was receiving a brow lift. She was instructed to give the victim Versed, possibly 4 milligrams, and that the patient was still awake. Ben said, give her more, and the employee did. The employee said that she may have given a third dose, but she wasn't 100% sure. But she, did leave the room after that, and then she could hear Ben starting to yell the victim's name in an attempt to wake her up. Her and another employee responded, to which Ben was like, no, everything's fine, everything's okay, you guys can leave. And so after they had left the room again, all of a sudden they hear Ben screaming this patient's name with much more urgency, and said that he was having a difficult time waking the patient up. The second employee was interviewed by the police, and she had actually said that she left after that incident due to concerns of a neglectful practice. Hillary was a loving mom, and she was devoted to her 3 children, and she died at the age of 33. This whole thing really seems like a horror story coming to life, but family states that the marriage wasn't the best, that Ben and Hillary began dating in 2021. They married in 2022, and they both brought children from previous marriages, but seemed to blend the family okay. The marriage, though, at times seemed to go from hot to cold, and they thought maybe Hillary kind of seemed happy for the most part, and she would often let her husband operate on her. Family and friends said that there were signs that Hillary was unhappy in her marriage, but she was resistant to leave and wanted to make the relationship work. 3 months after the passing of Hillary, Ben is now under investigation by the Florida Department of Health. This was triggered by complaints filed by former patients and employees. Patients came forward to say that they had been left with nasty infections, wounds that wouldn't heal, and permanent injuries. Employees said that Ben repeatedly violated numerous medical regulations, like performing or allowing others to perform certain surgical procedures in his office without properly trained staff or equipment, not following cleaning and sterilization protocols, and not following up properly on post-surgical wound care. The facility, Restore Plastic Surgery, has had 2 malpractice lawsuits opened up against it. There's currently only one open, and the plaintiffs, Wendy and William Carden, alleged that Ben had used foreign materials in a post-mastectomy reconstructive breast surgery without Wendy's consent in 2018 that actually led to her developing an infection that led to sepsis. They also accused Ben of negligently failing to periodically monitor the position of the upper extremities, as Wendy had suffered nerve damage and other permanent injuries due to the extension and position of her arms during the prolonged surgery. And that's actually a thing, by the way, for people who aren't familiar with surgery, haven't had it, don't work in it. Positioning is so important because when you're moving your patient, right, they are typically pharmacologically paralyzed and sedated. So you, as a patient, might have shoulder mobility issues, but once you're asleep, I could place your shoulder in a position that normally you wouldn't be able to. So then when you wake up, your shoulder's absolutely screaming, right? You can have nerve injuries and you can also have pressure injuries as well, which is why we've got like these like egg crate pads that we use to protect bony areas, since you're going to be laying in one spot for a prolonged amount of time. But back to Ben. There were actually local personal injury lawyers who refused to take his former patients that wanted to sue for medical malpractice due to the fact that Ben had minimal insurance coverage limits, and he also had the patients sign arbitration agreements, which means patients forego their rights to a jury trial should they pursue a medical malpractice case. Arbitration agreements are typically one-sided in favor of like big businesses or insurance companies, and it's like saying you don't care about your Seventh Amendment right to have a jury decide a dispute you have with X individual or company. So June 2024, a judge did sign an arrest warrant for Ben, who was arrested and placed in the Santa Rosa County Jail, where he was bonded out the same day for $50,000. He was charged with second-degree felony homicide, which is manslaughter by culpable negligence. The state said that Hillary, with no medical background, was allowed to prepare and administer her own anesthesia solution prior to the procedure that she was getting. There was also, I don't know if there were rumors, there was a couple of sites that had said it, that she'd also closed her own skin, like suturing it to help in the procedure. And despite the fact that she became unresponsive, Ben still continued to operate on her. So I will be very curious to how this plays out. I'll give you one last story. Dr. Carlos Chacon, a plastic surgeon in Chula Vista, California, was charged with involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 3 years. A mother of 2, Megan Espinoza, died in December of 2018 during a routine breast augmentation. Apparently, she had agreed to having the surgery under conscious sedation. So conscious sedation is like you're not fully asleep for that. You typically are able to protect your own airway. You shouldn't be able to feel it, but you're not completely out. To me, that doesn't seem right, and unfortunately doesn't specify what kind of breast augmentation procedure it was, like if it was a lift, a reduction, an implant, or what, because I feel like if you're going to be cutting into my breast, I better be out of it, but also 2, like if you need to get underneath the muscle or separate muscle, you need paralysis. So unfortunately, that information's not available. But the consent that Megan had agreed to was that she was going to get conscious sedation alongside a licensed anesthesiologist provider. Carlos was the one who gave the anesthesia medication, and he did not have a license to do so. There was a nurse that also gave Megan a cocktail of pain medication via IV during the procedure. The medical board revealed that video of the procedure showed numerous staff members taking selfies with their cameras in the operating room. More than half an hour later, Megan's heart rate began to rise rapidly, and then within minutes, her heart had stopped. So from 2:22 p.m. to 4:10 p.m., Carlos had started CPR. The nurses were administering medication and at least 9 doses of Narcan, and Carlos was, instead of calling for 911, calling other providers to ask for advice. The 2 anesthesiologists who answered told him same thing, call 911, and Carlos still did not, despite Megan beginning to make like gurgling noises and seizing. At 5:24 p.m., 3 hours after he had first performed CPR, Carlos finally decided to call 911. Megan was transported to a hospital where she lived on a vent for several weeks before she passed. Other records that were obtained showed that Carlos was trying to use a cheat sheet. This is my own speculation. I'm thinking he probably tried to use like a BLS, ACLS protocol sheet during CPR. This investigation also led the medical board to find out that Carlos had 4 other examples of letting someone provide anesthesia that did not have the credentialing to do so. His license was revoked, and he was sentenced along with another nurse in the procedure who pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and received 2 years of prison. What I can't seem to find out, though, is how that nurse plays a role and how she was the one that got charges as well. All the sources I looked into just said that she was in connection, so I'm wondering if she was the nurse who was giving anesthesia. In reality, surgeries can go wrong all the time. It happens. But the fact that these surgeons are doing so at their own facility and not in a hospital is where that's really scary. We always joke with coworkers if they are choking, they swallowed water down the wrong pipe, whatever, right? That if they were to code, they're in the perfect place to do so. You're in a hospital. I figured most plastic surgeons probably want their own facility to optimize their money, so they don't really have to pay for surgical privileges at a hospital. But still, how do you have someone code and then not want to call 911? As a bystander, how do you watch this happen and not want to call? I mean, I've told this to a surgeon before, someone that I'd got into it over something that wasn't even my doing. I said I'd chart to protect the patient and my license. If they were to sue, I'd throw you under the bus immediately because I know you'd do the same to me. The hospital would do the same. So I just can't wrap my mind around being a healthcare provider, seeing a patient code, and know that, I mean, in my view, that they're medically unstable because they just coded, and like you not wanting to do anything to save them. I understand as far as like plastic surgery goes, I understand wanting to be comfortable in your body, but I really think there has to be some kind of cap on medical aesthetics or plastic surgery, right? Hillary Brown was a naturally gorgeous woman, in my own opinion, right? I don't think she needed all those procedures done. If you ever watch Love Island UK, all of the women tend to look older than they are because they've got these big fake lips, they've got fake breasts, they've got pillow face, they've got these bad extensions. It's almost like they're all trying to kind of look similar to each other. And the same goes for a lot of influencers, that they all get this same look about them, right? And I personally don't think it's a bad thing to look unique. I mean, shit, I get tattoos. I kind of like the uniqueness of it. You know, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to look like a combination of your parents. I think that's kind of cool. I think once you get on this mindset of plastic surgery will fix this one thing that I don't like about myself, you know, sometimes you tend to think, oh, okay, well, you find something else you don't like, and then you're going to get that fixed. And now there's something else, and it's like a slippery slope. I invest in Korean skincare, wear sunscreen year round with multiple applications during the day, and I do get Botox every so often. But I'm going in with that mindset of I don't trust what you're telling me if you're trying to sell me something, and I want to do my own research, right? I want to hear real people's stories. If you're telling me that, oh, well, you would lose weight if you ate microgreens, and oh, by the way, I sell microgreens here, right? It's like, okay, well, you've got something to benefit from it. That's why you're telling me that. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to invest back into yourself, but I think when people try to avoid aging altogether, that's where it gets ridiculous. You know, you don't want to look like Madonna hanging onto your youth with those creepy Gollum arms. I mean, we're all going to age. We will get laugh lines from the joys we shared in our decades of living. We will get stretch marks on our bodies from the lives that we have grown in birth as women. You'll get crow's feet around, you know, your eyes from the millions of smiles that have graced your face. I don't think it's a bad thing to have those displayed because in my opinion, I think it means that you've lived a really good life. All right, enough of the sappy shit. Next week, I want to discuss something controversial that I'm seeing a lot of. I want to cover ivermectin. I saw this in a Facebook nurse group that this woman who said her quote unquote research was typing into Chat GPT. Like, girl, you got a nursing degree. You should know how to go through the credibility of your resources, your research. But maybe not. Maybe you went to school in Florida and you're fake news. I have no idea. But yes, I want to talk about ivermectin and the myths, the facts of it. So make sure you subscribe, tell your friends, family, coworkers, get on your Alzheimer's grandma's phone and subscribe as well. It really helps with the growth of the podcast. And I really would like to expand this community. I would like to expand this bad boy. I'd like to, be able to interview people of different medical backgrounds and just really kind of like connect with different people and make sure that we're all included. And then you can also say that you've been here from the beginning. So that'd be pretty cool. You can always find me on Instagram at Under the Scrubs Podcast. You can also email me if you've got maybe like a suggestion of something that you want to hear about, learn about. It's at underthescrubspodcast@gmail.com. Like I said, or you can just slide into the DMs, one or the other. So yeah, I will see you guys next Tuesday. Okay, love you. Bye.